This presentation is brought to you by the Pacific Division Shelter and Leadership. Today is our last session. Thank you so much for spending the past few months with us. Several housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded and it will be posted tonight on YouTube. The link is in the email you received earlier. You should enter your own hours for this meeting. Your mic and camera have been disabled. We ask you to enter your questions in the Q&A. The chat scrolls too fast and we won't be able to catch the questions. We will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. We also understand that some of you may know the answer to certain questions. However, we kindly ask you to allow our presenters the opportunity to respond as they have prepared insights specifically for this session. Feel free to use the chat to say hi to each other. I'd like to welcome today's presenters. We have Hillary and Angie. Hillary is from the Northern California coastal region and has been with us since 2017. She is a mass care chief and a shelter manager. Angie is from the California Gold Country region, and she's also been with us since 2017. She's a mass care generous manager and a shelter manager. So with that, Hillary and Angie, please take it away.
Angie, are you here? I don't think she's here. So I'm just going to start. Can you hear me?
Yep, I
All
can
right,
hear you.
awesome. Okay, well, friends, this is what we talk about when we say be flexible, be Gumby, do the best you can with what you've got. So I'm going to start, and if Angie joins, she can jump in on her slides. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Our topic, oh, she is here and cannot come off mute. That's a
There we
bummer.
go.
Okay,
Now I can.
and here's Angie.
Yes. Hi there, everyone. Sorry for the tardiness. I was having a little technical issues there and couldn't come off of mute. Again, as Iwe said, I am Angie. I am from Gold Country. I'm currently the regional mass care lead. I was just coming off of another training I was doing, and so I had to travel about an hour to get back to my home. So, but what we're here today is to be beginning, middle, or end of a deployment. We're going to talk a little bit about deploying, some of the phases, what to expect. So let's get started. Next slide, please. I guess I can do that. Okay. So some of the DR phases, you have the beginning. The beginning is a little chaotic. There's a lot going on in the beginning of a DR. You have a lot of pieces being put together, a lot of functions coming together to try to make it work. You have your headquarters, you have your logistics, your sheltering, all of those pieces are trying to come together so that we can provide the best care for our clients. So it seems a little chaotic. I call it organized chaos, which I absolutely love. I thrive in that type of environment, but not everybody does. There's some uncertainty because you're not sure what your role will be, what part you will play, not until your supervisor may direct you. So there's some uncertainty there. Then you have your middle phase. It's more organized, it's calmer, it's more conducive to a training atmosphere. You can actually, some of the new people, maybe this is their first deployment, you may want to consider this phase as opposed to the beginning phase. The end phase then is things start to slow down. We start closing up shelters, maybe letting some people go off the DR. We don't need all the personnel or the staff that we have. And or you may be asked to do another function based on what gaps you have. So I always encourage people when I am talking to new volunteers, if you have never deployed before, or if you're brand new, I always suggest that people not deploy in that first wave. That first wave, as I indicated, is very chaotic. Supervisors want to do their best jobs for the people that they have under them, but sometimes because of all the chaos, it's not as easy to provide that training and that one-on-one type of step that you may need when you're new. So I always suggest, and it's just a suggestion, that you maybe wait until the second phase. Next slide, please. So some deployment assignments. Let's talk about that. What is one step you would take if you wanted to deploy? If you can put it in the chat, what is one step you might want to take? And I'll look at the chat, see if we have anything. Let's see. Be prepared to go before it's time. Sign up for shifts. Notify your staffing. All really good answers. Definitely mark your availability. Have your luggage ready. Yes. Excellent. Next slide, please. So your deployment team will be checking the door for you. If you have made it known that you want to deploy, they'll be checking the door. And no, not this door. Although it's a pretty red door, it's not this door. Next slide, please. Yeah, I can do it. Okay. So the door is the disaster operations open requests. Your deployment team has access to that. Some other people as well have access to that. There's some limited, I guess, some certificates and it costs for some people, for everyone to have access. So they've limited the number of people that have access, but your deployment team will know what positions are available and what positions are open to deploy you. You want to make sure you have completed the gap you want to deploy in. It's not usually that, although you may have some damage assessment experience in there, you actually have to have the gap. Make sure your availability is updated. Very important. Even if you're not available, we want you to go in there and mark yourself that you're not available, even for a specific time period. I'm not sure how many of you watched the sync call in the morning with Brad Kaiserman, but he actually relies on that information. When we are looking at how many responders are available, they pull that information from the availability that's marked. So it's really, really important for you to go in there and make sure your availability is up to date. I believe you can go out 2 or 3 months. So please mark when you are available as well as when you're not available. Does everybody, I hope, know how to get to your availability section? If not, you might want to check with your local team and have them show you how to do that. Then you want to notify your deployment team what you are interested, what you are wanting to deploy in. Next slide, please. So some types of employment, of deployment. Pardon me, I'm getting a little tongue-tied here. So some of the types of deployments are local or regional or national deployments. There are also virtual deployments and boots on the ground. Local and regional are just that. They're within your area, your region, or it could be within your disaster response area. Up in Northern California, we have some fires. Thank goodness they haven't been bad. But in Southern California, they've been experiencing a lot of fires. We have fires in Idaho, Washington, Oregon. A lot of fires going on right now. We also have fires in Canada now that we're deploying people. Thank you, Dennis. Always make sure you have your real ID as well. That's a good one. There are also national deployments. For your national deployments, if you're going to fly, you have to make sure you have your real ID or a passport. If you do not have one of those, unfortunately, You still will be able to go, but the process at the airport will take much, much longer because they will actually do that at the airport. They'll run the checks. They'll make sure you are compliant with all the information that they require, do those background checks and stuff. So it's easier if you can get the real ID or your passport ahead of time if you are planning on deploying outside of your area, outside of your region. So let's talk about virtual. Virtual is kind of nice for some people. If you really, really want to help a mission or a deployment, if you want to do a deployment, but you're not able to travel, sometimes a virtual option is better for you. You may want to just be able to help from home. That's one of the easy things is that you get to work from the comfort of your own home, but it also has some downfalls. Because you are home, your family may expect you to do those things that you may normally do when you're home, like cooking the meals and doing all that for the family and stuff. And sometimes you're limited as to what you can perform during those times because you are on shift during a specific time. It may be anywhere from an 8 to 12-hour shift or even longer. Depends on what function you're deployed in. There's some time differences that you still have to that still apply. One time, Hillary and we served in helping Kentucky. Our shift started at, I believe it was at 7 o'clock in the morning for Kentucky time, or 8 o'clock in the morning. But here it was 4 o'clock. So even though I was doing a 12-hour shift, I had to start at 4 in the morning. So you still have to observe those time differences, and those still apply. There was one I was helping with virtually in Hawaii, and they have a big time difference. I was totally confused that whole time that I was helping that Hawaii. But so always make sure that if you want to deploy virtually, make sure that that you're aware of those time differences. That you're able to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock or whatever the time is to be able to work those shifts that apply. Boots on the ground is just that. You're in person, you're working with the clients or with your team in person on the ground. You may stay in a staff shelter. You may stay in a hotel. Either way, when you are deployed, you want to be prepared for either situation. Even though you may start out in a hotel, there may be times when hotels may be booked for functions, so they may shift you to a staff shelter. You always have to be prepared for whatever situation you may be placed in. When you deploy, also you receive a mission card. A mission card is to help you with any incidentals. We can't always pack everything we need, or we may forget something that we may need, and so the Red Cross provides you some money to be able to purchase those things. Always keep your receipts though when you do use your mission card. Next slide, please. So another type of deployment or standby team is DR 222-23. That's our national standby team. So national has this team, especially right now, it's so critical to have teams that are on standby to be able to go within a 24-hour notice. You will be on that team for 3 weeks. Within that 3-week period, especially now, I don't believe people are on standby very long because we have so many disasters going on right now. You're deployed almost immediately. Once you request to go on a standby team, if there's no openings for deployment right away, you may go on the standby team if that position is needed. And so you would go, you'd spend your 3 weeks, hopefully within that time, and I can almost guarantee right now that you will be deployed. And then you serve your 2-week period and you come back. We also in the Pacific Division have a similar type of standby team, and it's specifically for the Pacific Division, and that is 664-25. you can get on that standby team, and that will help help our leadership in the Pacific Division know who we have available if they need to pull from that to deploy within the Pacific Division. Next slide, please. Other types of standby teams may be pre-landfall. You might have your ground stop or your standby teams. So if you've deployed for a hurricane, or those of you that want to deploy to hurricanes, before the hurricane actually hits land, you may be in a hotel or a staff shelter pending arrival of that hurricane and as it passes through. That is actually called ground stop. We're not allowed to do any work. We're basically shelter in place. You may have team leaders to make sure we're all safe. They will check in with you and will provide direction from you from headquarters when we can, or when you are available, or when you are able to go out to your assignment. The other one is called a standby team. So specifically, as in hurricanes, you may be on a standby team. You may go to a mobilization center. A mobilization center gathers everybody's name, and then they just send everybody out to an evacuation center. So you may just be waiting for a while, and it takes a little bit of patience because we all want to go out there and help. That's what we deployed for. But then it takes some patience, but it gives you some time to prepare for what you may be encountering when you're out there and actually on the job. The other one is called a straight standby. So when you are deployed, sometimes, especially for sheltering, we may have some standby teams. We do that so that if we do have to open a shelter right away, we have teams available that we can send out that are able to open those shelters within a 2-hour period. So you may be assigned to a standby team. During that standby period, I encourage you to take some more training, check with your leadership at headquarters or your supervisor. Let them know, is it okay to do some things that are maybe not mission requirements? I know some people that go and they tour the city. As long as you're within a phone call away, some supervisors will allow you to do that. There's just always things you can do, but always check with your leadership to see what you are allowed to do and how far you can go away from where you are actually stationed. Next slide, please. And this is Hillary's section.
Yes, hello, and thank you, Angie, for jumping in before I had to tap dance through your slides. I was a little nervous about that, but I'm feeling good now.
I am so sorry. Thank you, Hillary.
No worries. So Angie talked about some different types of deployments, different periods during which you can deploy. And so we're going to stay a little bit on that theme and talk a bit about hardship codes. And these are related to what Angie was talking about with the different phases of an operation, or they can be associated with that. So hardship codes are the Red Cross way of letting responders know what conditions they should expect for a particular disaster response. The codes relevant to a particular DRO, disaster response operation, are included on the door, which is the disaster operations open something. It's basically the help wanted board for responders to help out. So included on the door, whenever they post a position, it will say what are the hardship codes for that particular response. So I will throw to you to say, can you think of what hardships we may want responders to consider? Take a few seconds and put one in the chat if you have access to it. And I won't yell at you for putting things in the chat. as I may have on other calls. Okay, getting some good responses in there. So I'm going to share a few. I love to see that you guys have been paying attention to all your trainings. So let's talk about some specifics. And let's see if my slide works. There we go. So electricity is a possibility. Food, you may have a special need diet that you need to stick to, and it may not be possible to obtain the actual foods that you would like or that you need to have if there's a situation like power is out everywhere or something along those lines. Road conditions may be very difficult slash treacherous slash roads might be closed, and so drives to work might take a lot longer. You've got extreme heat and extreme cold could come into play, and there might be accessibility issues based on whatever is happening around that DR. So, the hardship codes might change and be updated as conditions on the ground change. So usually there's more at the beginning of a response than there is at in the middle or near the end. Often because utilities come back online, things start to get cleaned up, so roads can reopen, things of that nature. So we really want to make sure that our responders take these hardship codes seriously. Before you accept an assignment, ask yourself, are these conditions going to work for me? So if you've got asthma or other respiratory issues, for example, can you really work and live in a place where there might be heavy smoke in the air during a wildfire? Or should you think twice and maybe say, I'm going to wait until the next wave when the air quality is better, rather than becoming someone that needs to be taken care of instead of being a caretaker as a Red Cross responder. If it's not the right conditions for you to be able to work and sleep well enough, there's probably going to be another phase on this particular response that you could go out for. And we know there will always be another disaster soon enough. I believe eWaste put in a link to the hardship codes on OneSource, and there's also a link at the end of our presentation. All right, so let's see what else we have. So being on deployment, regardless of what phase you're on, it's hard work, right? And we shouldn't pretend otherwise. Your schedule gets out of whack. You might be working long days or nights if you're a shelter worker. There's always something that needs to be done. So it's tiring for your body and for your brain. And it could be tiring for your heart as well. Your empathetic part of your heart. So you might feel like you don't know what to do and you want to help people the best you can. At the same time, you want to follow the rules and you're wondering, am I doing right by these clients and the Red Cross? Will these people that I'm working with be okay? I don't know how to fix what's happening to them. So be sure to recognize how stress and trauma manifest differently in members of diverse community. So we try and do our best, but no one expects us to fix everything. And that may sound trite, but it's really important that we try to keep those thoughts top of mind. So I want to talk a little bit about something that I recently learned a name for. And if you've deployed before, you've probably seen it happen. Or if you are in any sort of social work or mental health profession or just anything doing stressful work. So during a disaster, you might see or hear things that will be really unpleasant. And even if you're not experiencing them firsthand, you're not one who's running from a fire, or you didn't have your house blown down in a tornado or a hurricane. You're likely on a response to interact with people who have dealt with these things. And when in these situations, the empathy that we should have for the clients and the people around us can grow into something called vicarious trauma. And I know that sounds scary. Vicarious trauma is a process of over identifying with survivors, almost to the point where you're taking on their trauma, their burdens as your own. And it's an occupational hazard for people like us that want to go and help people. Um, but if you're not careful and you take on others' problems, then it's just going to compound your stress and you'll be less able to help people. So, how can we deal with our stress so it doesn't reach that extent? And I'm going to give you a couple of examples, not that I made up, but that I read about. So, one thing is positive self talk when you're facing a potentially difficult moment. So, you see somebody that you need to go and talk with in your shelter, tell yourself, oh, I don't feel like dealing with this really angry person right now, but I've done it before and I know I can do it again. Or you want to redefine a distressing task to make it more manageable. And you can do that by trying to take out the emotional element of it. So think to yourself, in spite of what's happened to this poor woman, her first need is for a calm and sympathetic support person. And I'm good at that. That's why I'm here. So recognizing that everyone has different ways of coping with stress, we know sometimes we see things and we go, what are those people doing over there? So you can think to yourself, these dumb jokes might be driving me crazy, but I guess it's their way of letting off steam. So I'm just going to ignore it if I have to. Um, the other thing is, if you do feel like things are stressful and they're getting to you, you want to use the resources that you have available. We've always got staff health on a disaster response. We've got our mental health folks. We've got spiritual care. We've got staff relations. Um, Hopefully you have a phone a friend in Red Cross that can just understand what's going on for you and can support you, or a loved one at home that can give you guidance, support, and grounding. So as I said earlier at the beginning of this slide, it's hard, but it's equally, if not more, rewarding. And that's why so many of us keep coming back over and over and over again. Okay, so you've had this stress, you've been around, you're home now, or you're coming to the end of your response, your assignment, and you're feeling like it's just too much. And that happens, but if I could get you to promise me you would do this, I would, but I can't do that. So I'm going to just ask you, give yourself a cooling off period, right? If you're stressed or you're upset or you don't agree with how something went down, take some time to decompress, get some rest, kind of come back to yourself more before you decide to quit sheltering or saying you're never going to deploy again. And also with that, use that post-deployment check-in that you should get from Disaster Mental Health. They call everybody who's been on a deployment just to see how they're doing. And use that conversation to talk through what you're feeling and what might be bothering you. Use coping mechanisms that are helpful for you, whatever that might be. Some people meditate, they do deep breathing, they have some sort of story they tell to themselves. Identify some coping mechanisms that will work for you now, before you go into a stressful situation, because then they'll be easier to access when you're in that hard time. And again, talk with other Red Crossers to learn how they deal with hard responses. And again, keep coming back for more. Okay, we're going to move on. So if after all that and you've done your self-talk and you've tried to sort of come back to normal, if you still think this just wasn't for you, it's okay, right? Sheltering is not for everybody, and that's okay. Some people love it, some people just don't. So there are at least 100 unique roles on a large DRO. So these are your LA wildfires, your big Texas floods, any of the really big ones. There's more than 100 unique roles. And so with that, there's bound to be something else that will match your skills and your interests. And if you just deploying is just not for you, you're a homebody, you want to stay around your house, that's okay. There's so many other ways to contribute on the disaster side of Red Cross, whether it's blue skies only work, preparedness programs, DAT, or even just local or virtual responses. Any of those things could work for you. And if you need to make a change in what you're doing, talk to your workforce engagement person, the person that deploys you, talk to your CDPM, talk to somebody locally, and they'll help you find a better fit for yourself. Okay. So I want to start summing it up here. So you need to manage your expectations and find the right time for your deployment that will be successful. It may not look the same for everybody. Angie mentioned she thrives on that early adrenaline rush of tons of things going on at once, and that's great. And other people like to take it a bit slower, and that's fine for them too. So with that said, remember, it's a disaster, right? That word has meaning. You've got to expect some discomfort, expect there to be stressed out people, stressful situations, and it may seem disorganized. There is method to the madness often, so it may seem disorganized, but be a little bit more organized than it appears. Hopefully, the extent of that might depend on the phase of the operation and the nature of the disaster and the response. Remember also that your days and your night shifts can be long. You'll be tired. Your cozy bed at home might be replaced by a staff shelter, either for the first couple of days of your deployment or maybe even the whole thing. Some people hate the idea of a staff shelter. I say, think of it like summer camp or a giant sleepover. What fun, right? And if you're worried, I promise you will not be the only one with a CPAP. There's lots of stuff going on. Overall, be flexible if your assignment has to change to meet the needs of the operation. And keep in mind that there's a bigger picture than your shift or your shelter or even your whole activity. And we as a Red Cross are going to do our very best to meet the needs of our clients and their communities. So finally, remember that being part of a team that's making a difference for those that are affected by a disaster can be one of the most rewarding experiences you can have. All right, so we are ready to move on to questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Thank you so much, Angie, for presenting. It will be a little challenging since we have many questions buried in the chat. So let's go to the Q&A first, then we'll go through all the questions in the chat.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
first question. It was mentioned to request to be put on a standby team. How do we make the request?
I'll go ahead and take that. So you would go through your deployment team Let them know that you want to be placed on the standby team, and they will go ahead and arrange that for you. You can also go through your DPM or CDPM and let them know if you don't know who your deployment team is.
And
Thank you so
there
much.
are opportunities to go on that standby team come up. It's not always open every day, every time, but it does open and close as they send people from the standby team onto the next DR that pops up. Then they will replenish that team. So you can't necessarily say it's Tuesday, I want to go on the standby team right now. There may not be a spot, but there may be in a day or 3 days or whenever it's deemed necessary.
Thank you. And Robin Lusk, your DPM is Seth Williams, so you can go ahead and reach out to him if you need additional help. Next question on sync calls. So we talked about sync calls. I believe I remember another question from the chat. It's can anyone attend sync call? Is there a recommendation or requirement who can attend or who cannot? And the follow-up question is the sync call recorded? If yes, where can we find the recording?
Anyone can attend the sync call. Not everyone is allowed to speak during the sync call. It's those direct reports to Brad Kaiserman, our national leadership. There is a link that's available. I don't know. Do you have the link that you can post, E-Way? I wasn't sure if you
Yes,
do
I
or not.
posted earlier that
Okay.
there's a calendar that you can download. So it's 6 o'clock every morning Pacific time, which is the 9 o'clock Eastern time, every day, Monday through Friday for about 30 minutes, depending on the disasters. If we don't really have disaster relief operation going on, probably takes 20 minutes. If we do, sometimes take 40 minutes.
Exactly. And I encourage for people to watch those only because you can get some really, really important information about what's happening right now and what the Red Cross may be looking at. They also talk about maybe some upcoming doctrine changes. There's just some really, really valuable information. And that call is recorded. So if you're not able to attend at 6 o'clock, you can also find the recording. When you do request access to watch that, you may have to wait for a little bit for access to be granted to you, but it is anyone is allowed to attend.
There's another set of sync calls as well. So if you are on a larger DRO, they will do an individual DRO specific sync call, and there's an invitation that comes from national headquarters for that. And typically it's the leaders of that response. So the job director, the ADs, and if they need somebody else to join, then they might bring someone else in. But typically those are for leadership, and yeah, there's not an opportunity for people to ask questions or make comments unless they are part of the agenda. Just so nobody's thinking that they get a chance to ask a question of Brad himself or anything like that.
Thank
Okay.
you. So I still do see multiple ones on how do we listen in. I don't see a link. So again, the link is on OneSource, and I know that we posted so many things in the chat already. So if you scroll all the way up, somewhere buried, there's a link. The easier way, the faster way to find it is go on OneSource, type in sync call. You would have two options pop up. One says national sync call, the other one says DRO sync call. DRO sync call is the one that Hillary just mentioned that is a disaster relief operation specific. The national sync call is the daily Monday through Friday sync call that regardless of activities that they will have. Okay, let's go to the next one. I think next one is more of a comment than a question, is that you may feel you're abandoning those in need when your 2 weeks are up and you're going home. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for taking care of ourselves and also taking care of our clients. Let's go to the questions in the chat. Let's see where I can find the questions. Okay, I'm going to go from the very bottom to the most recent to the oldest one. Where do you find the no deployment volunteer work?
What, I'm not sure what that means.
My interpretation is that steady state, that does not require, there's no active disaster. You're just doing preparedness for the region. So where can you find those?
So that is something that you should speak with your local team, either someone from workforce, maybe the person that onboarded you as a volunteer. If you're not sure who's on your workforce team, you could speak with your CDPM, your Community Disaster Program Manager, and they can help you find a good fit for you to do on preparedness or sound the alarm or DAT or all kinds of different things. We've got so many options. It would be far too many to go over here, but somebody local to you can help you find a right fit volunteer opportunity.
And I can certainly connect you with your local team after this call so you can know who to reach out to. Okay, next question. Can you indicate what hardship codes that you are not able to tolerate on your availability posting?
That's a really good question. So not on your availability, but you can touch base with, again, your workforce coordinator, your deployment team member, whoever it is that deploys you or deploys people in your local area. And there's something that we can put in a profile that's an accommodation. So that could be anything from, I use a wheelchair or a walker, so I have mobility issues. It could be I can't deploy if there's not going to be electricity, things like that. And they can put that in your volunteer connection profile. It's not something you can say with your availability, but it does show up when I happen to be a deployment team person too. So it does show up when we run reports and we're looking for people to go on certain DRs. It will show us that this person has an accommodation. And then we can go ahead and look that up and look up what is their particular accommodation that they need, and is that going to be a problem for this particular DR or at this time. Yes, very nice.
Okay, so there goes the screen share. I see quite a few questions on how do we update our availability? How do we do the accommodation? So this is my volunteer connection. And so under my profile, if you go to disaster cycle services, you'll see there's accommodation plan. So you can go ahead and add accommodation. And disaster responder availability, this is where you go in, you can go ahead and edit, and you're able to do whether it's local, whether it's regional, whether it's state, division, national, and virtual. And it's always good to confirm your availability. So I confirmed last time I confirmed was July the 7th. I'm just going to check confirmed again. That is July the 16th. So national and your deployment team knows when you're available or not available. So they're not calling you when you're not available, or they're not calling you when you're actually available.
Yeah. Yue, can I
Yes.
add that it's very important to put when you're not available also. So
Yes,
hers,
correct.
it shows available, but you can also put times when you're not available.
So I'm
Exactly.
gonna show you real quick. So you'll see there's a button here that says not available. So you can go ahead and put in your dates, then you say not available, then you can go ahead and save changes.
And
Okay.
if anyone is looking at their profile in Volunteer Connection and saying, what is she talking about? I don't see that at all. You're still sharing, UA. I don't know if you mean to be, but
I'm trying to
if
get off the sharing part
okay, no
because I need to
worries.
come back to this to unshare.
No worries. You may be looking at your profile and you may not see disaster responder availability. And if you don't, it's either because you don't have a gap listed on your profile, so you haven't finished the training for any particular gap, like a mass care, shelter, service associate, or you have, and that gap has been added to your profile, but someone forgot to check a couple of other things that are kind of behind the scenes in Volunteer Connection. And so you're not seeing it. If you believe that you have finished the training for a gap and that you are ready to go as a disaster responder, again, reach out to your workforce engagement person, people, or your DPM, and they can help get your profile fixed up so you then have access to that responder availability. Without that availability showing, we don't know to call you to ask you if you'll go on a deployment or if you're willing to be assigned to, a local or regional response. So that's probably your most important indicator of willingness. Okay, next question. What do we have
Next
today?
question, I'm sharing my screen again, is we have several people asking, where is the door? So the door is here. If you can
Can
see it.
I hold on?
Yes, you can.
Most people cannot see the door.
Correct. That's what I
So,
was trying to get into, but go
okay.
ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say the door is something that people in workforce engagement, people in assigned to a disaster response as a staffing person, maybe a DPM, some various other people can see the actual door, but most people cannot. They can see a sort of static snapshot of what was of what the positions that were open at one particular time is, but they can't see the live door and have the most up to date. So sorry, I just didn't want you, Yue, to show that and then have people again wondering how come I can't see that. But
Right.
if
Thank
you
you
would
so
like to
much.
show it, go for it. If not, I
Thank you so
can.
much. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Hillary is absolutely correct. This is not something that everyone sees. You need to have special access for a DW team to be able to see it. But Door, it's just, it's a system online that we use. Okay, so another question on the Door. Is the Door different than signing up in Volunteer Connection?
The door, there are two sides of a coin, right? On one side, the door is, say, like your want ads. It's all the DRs saying we need 10 shelter SAs and we need one disaster health services supervisor. And the availability in Volunteer Connection is saying, hey, I have these gaps and I am available to come to your DR, whether it's national or divisional or state, whatever it is that you select. And so there's a process of matching the needs of the DRs with the people that are available and have that training and have that gap. So
Thank
they're
you.
related, but they're two sides of the coin.
Right. One is the request, one is when you're available. So the
Yes.
next question talks about the difference between a position and a function. So what is the difference between SA and MC? Is MC
Mm.
just outside of the shelter, or like what is MC?
Okay, so if you think of a gap, right? Your gap is group activity position. So MC mass care is the group. And within mass care, there are a number of different activities like sheltering, like feeding, like shelter resident transition. That was for you, Cynthia. Um, um, Pets, distribution of emergency supplies. So those are all various activities that fall under the umbrella of mass care. And then within each of those is um, a position, meaning it's basically a level of training and experience. So everybody starts out as an SA, a service associate in whatever activity they're trained in, they're interested in. And after you've worked for a while as an SA, you can ask to be promoted to a supervisor or an SV, and from there, a manager, and so on. So they're basically ways of telling people that are looking for responders, this is someone that has training at least in this area at this level and maybe experience. So it's not just there's 400 people out there that are available and you can just pick one and hope that they would be really good driving the forklift in your warehouse, right? We don't want to guess who's who's been trained at sheltering or warehousing or disaster assessment. We want to know who exactly has been trained and a bit about what level of experience they have. And that's why we pin those gaps to people. I hope that helps. I'm not sure.
Thank you. Next question. Can we do camera on for virtual work? And are we able to see our clients?
So virtual work can be done for various different activities. Some of them are more obvious than others. For example, if we can have virtual disaster mental health or disaster spiritual care, right? Where it's more about a conversation than needing to be present necessarily with the person or be able to meet their needs for supplies and blankets. There's not a lot of room for virtual sheltering, except occasionally if we have people in hotels or other non-congregate. Yes, thank you. Reunification is another one that works well virtually. Whether cameras are able or not, I think would depend probably on the client and what device they had to be able to be on the other side of a call with you. So I would suggest if you're interested in that kind of work and you've trained in those kind of gaps to ask people in them whether they do on camera or not. I do think it depends on the technology on both sides.
Thank you. And the next question is, if I have deployed and still have my mission card, am I able to use the same mission card for the next deployment?
No, 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 no. So a mission card, once it's activated, which is what happens after you get assigned and you sign your little authorization form, and someone from the deployment team sends that number in and the money gets loaded onto it. Once that happens, that's it. That card cannot be used again. It can be reloaded if you run out of money for appropriate, reasonable reasons. They can put more money on it if needed, but it can't be used again on the next DR. It's very specific to that one DR.
Thank you so much. And the next question is, would you mention documenting volunteer hours worked on a disaster relief operation versus outside of a disaster relief operation, such as, disaster action team, steady state activities?
Yeah, sorry, I feel like I'm hogging everything, but
No, you're fine.
given that I am a workforce person, oh, and that's coming from Dennis also.
Yes.
So when you are assigned to a disaster response, you get that call and you say, yes, I will do it, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, whatever it is. You get assigned in Volunteer Connection and you will see it in your DRO history since 2013 section of your Volunteer Connection profile. And they will then, that's basically a record of the DRs you've been on. When you out process off of that DR and you go back home or you hang up your phone and your virtual calling hat, they will out process you and they will then give you credit. You will get hours for every day that you were assigned to that DR. Now, I'm sure that there's people going, what are you talking about? I look at my hours all the time. They've never shown up there. You are 100% right. They don't show up in that same section as when you record hours for attending an all hands meeting or going to a sound the alarm or spending an hour checking your Red Cross emails and sending emails and things like that. It's automatically recorded, but it lives in a different place in Volunteer Connection. So we only see that you were deployed to, let's say, the LA wildfires for these 14 days. We don't see that those 14 days equals X number of hours, but it's there. It's just sort of behind the scenes.
I'd like to add on to that a little bit. If you do not have the Red Cross app or Volunteer Connection app on your phone, I'd like to suggest if you are planning on deploying to download that. Yeah, that's what you'll use to check in daily. You can also do it on your computer, but it's easy if you have it on your phone. You can go in and just, indicate that you have worked that day, that your supervisor is correct, that where you are staying is correct. That's always an important tool when you are on deployment. So if you do not have that on your phone, you might want to consider doing that now before you do deploy.
Thank you. And we have another question on how do we log the time we spend on these meetings? Hillary, you want to take this?
Sure. So again, back to Volunteer Connection. You can go, if you are on your homepage of your Volunteer Connection site, right smack dab in the middle of the page, there is a spot right there for adding hours, and you would click on that. You fill in the little blanks there. What I tell people is the activity name should be something short and sweet, went to a meeting or sound the alarm or Pedro presentation, something like that. And then in other words, you don't have to write a story. Like I had a meeting with Susie and Bob and we talked about A, B, and C. You don't have to go that detailed. Your hours are almost always going to say worked unless you are on a certain type of job that has on call, like you're on call for DAT or you're on call for a health services shift or something like that. And then you're going to pick the position. We here in my region do it like pick the closest position to what the work was you were doing. That's just how we do it. Different regions do it differently. So don't take that as gospel. And typically you don't have to put in comments because if there's concern from someone who's looking at it, they'll just ask you. And sometimes it's silly, like you put in 20 hours instead of 2 or something like that. And it's just a whoops. You can also get to that same screen from inside your profile. Just scan down to the engagement section and you'll find it there.
Okay, one more question, then we'll close. Can you talk about batching hours?
I can. Okay, so you saw it's simple, right, to record your hours, but if I'm honest, it's also a pain in the neck. And so rather than have a 1 hour meeting and go in and say, I had a 1 hour meeting with my shelter team, and then later say I went and I made some phone calls and record that. What you can do is anything up to 40 hours, you can lump together. It might be 30. I might have lied, but it will tell you if you can't do it. You
It's
can
40.
go in and say, I went to 5 hours worth of sheltering meetings on Monday, and I did another 2 hours of follow-up on Wednesday, and on Friday we had a call about that work we had done. So I can go in and say, for the week of, you just pick a day, but what you're putting in, what I do is say, week of June 2nd, sheltering activities, 6 hours. So I'm not putting in every single one individually. I'm lumping them together in some way that makes it easier for me. Small enough that I can track it and not get lost, but enough that I don't feel like I'm spending 5 hours recording my hours. Hopefully that makes sense. A lot of people do it with on-call shifts, like for DAT or things like that. They'll just say, week of whatever, this many DAT shifts, 36 hours, and then do the next one until they run out of time that they spent on call.
Thank you so much, Hillary. Thank you all so much for attending. It is 6:32. We like to close this. Thank you all. And I see that Dad logs hour automatically, so you no longer have to log that in. Thank you so much. Remember to log in your volunteer hours. Remember to update your availabilities. We look forward to seeing you in this disaster season, if we still have a season. Thank you all. Thank you for all the presenters. And we will see you next year, hopefully, or on a disaster relief operation. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
And thanks, Iwei, for hosting all of these.
Of
Yes,
course.
thank you so
for
much.
having
Great.
me.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night, everyone.
Bye, all.